Hi, good evening. Welcome you all to the fifth session of Embark NET-JRF Free Crash Course conducted by MSF EFL University, Hyderabad. In the last four sessions, we have covered the important areas and PYQs from mathematical aptitude and data interpretation by Sedu sir, people development and environment by Shabab sir, and ICT and reading comprehension by Rafi sir. So, and today we are again honored to have our faculty, Mr. Rafid Janad, to deal with the topic research aptitude. As we all know, Rafid sir, he is a senior research fellow in comparative literature at EFL University, Hyderabad. So, join me to welcome our beloved faculty to take over the session. So, Rafid sir, please.
Okay, thank you, Fabian. And I'll share my screen. Okay, is it visible now?
Yeah, it is visible now.
Oh, so it is, we're basically talking about research aptitude, and research aptitude is something, again, as we said in the previous sessions, you can score easily without much difficulty. The basic idea about research aptitude when you prepare for research aptitude is that you should understand the concept and study, because most of the questions are relatable. If you know a particular concept, you might be able to answer maybe 2-3 questions from the same concept. So when you study for it, make sure that you know what you're doing, you understand what you're doing fully. Okay, and that is one tip that I have to give you related to research aptitude. And here's the syllabus. Today we'll try to cover the syllabus, and also we'll discuss some questions. The rest, the notes were shared in the group, right? So I'll try to share the remaining portions. And in the syllabus, we have the basic idea is meaning, like what does it mean, what is research, and types of research, and characteristics, like what sorts of characters a research has. And wait, I'll just be back in a minute. Okay, yeah, so sorry about that. And here we have, what does it mean to say research, types of research, characteristics of research. And there are two approaches, positivism and post-positivism. We'll briefly discuss that as well. And there are methods of research. I think the method part used to have multiple questions in the NET exam. Experimental research, descriptive research, historical research, qualitative, quantitative, stuff like that. You used to have match the following questions, or like, NTA even ask, identify the form of research from a given description. You have to say that research is experimental or that research is descriptive. And then the other part of the syllabus is about writing. It might be about writing the thesis or writing the article. Okay. Then it used to also ask about format, MLA format, and Chicago format, other popular formats, APA format, and styles. And the other minor part is the application of ICT in research. So there aren't many questions from ICT in research, but you can kind of, as it is a kind of a cross-section sort of an area where both ICT and research come together, you can kind of expect questions from that as well. And research ethics, it's the part which deals with plagiarism and other issues. This is also important, but not a major area when it comes to importance. Okay, so like we did yesterday, we'll start with questions. We'll have multiple questions in between. So here is your first question. There are two sets given below. Set 1 specifies the type of research, while set 2 indicates the characteristics. So on the left side, you have the name of the research, and on the right side, you have the description of the research. Okay, from the name, you have to guess the description. And I'm sure that even if you haven't read a lot from research, it's an area which you can simply guess and find a correct answer. Okay, so even if you don't know anything about research, try guessing now. The first one is fundamental research, the second applied research, action research, evaluative research. So from the questions you can say fundamental is something very basic, applied is it's about application, action is it involves an action, evaluative has an evaluation. Okay, and the descriptions are finding out the extent of perceived impact of an intervention, developing an effective explanation through theory building, improving an existing situation through use of interventions, exploring the possibility of a theory for use in various situations, enriching technological resources. So please give your answers. As I said, you can give a wild guess, but still, when it comes to research, I would always recommend this tactic of, I would say, informed guessing, where you know something a little bit, and from that little bit, you are trying to make a larger guess. Okay, so likewise, please try to answer. Anybody thinks it's A, or like here we have option number 1, 2, 3, 4. Please give your answers. And usually questions are detailed when it comes to research aptitude. Okay, yesterday we talked about ICT. Okay, from ICT you cannot really have many detailed questions, bigger questions, but when it comes to research, questions are usually big, so you have to read from the beginning to end. Okay, you cannot just take a look at the question and find an answer. Please read, even if you think you know the answer. We have one person who told it's 4, another person said it's 1. Okay, so there are 2 4s. Others, please. Yes, the correct answer is 1. Okay, correct answer is 1. Let me see how it's correct. So when we say fundamental research, A, it is something, the answer it says 3, improving an existing situation through use of intervention. Okay, so not 3, 2. It says developing an effective explanation through theory building. So when we say fundamental, you can say a theory. We are talking about a fundamental theory, a basic theory. And applied. Applied is not definitely fundamental, but we are applying this theory somewhere. Okay, and then it will be, let's say B is 4. 4 is exploring the possibility of a theory for use in various situations. So we are using the theory, or we are applying the theory in various situations. And the confusing option might be action research. Okay, you might be confused, like what is an action in research, right? So the action research is improving an existing situation through use of intervention. So in an action research, we'll talk about these categories in detail later. In an action research, you are acting on a situation. Okay, now you have a problem and you have to act immediately. For example, COVID happened, right? So when COVID became a pandemic, we had to find a solution. We had to find a medicine. We have to find a remedy for COVID, a cure for COVID, right? So in order to find the cure, you have to act immediately. So there it comes to an action research. So all researches that try to find an immediate solution for COVID is an action research. And an evaluative research is finding out the extent of perceived impact of an intervention. For example, now we know that we have, like, as a result of action research, we developed COVID vaccine and many people took vaccine. Okay. And now we have to know what happened to the people who took vaccine. What happens to the people who doesn't take vaccine, okay, who didn't take vaccine. So to find the difference, we have to do an evaluative research. We have to evaluate what happens. We have to find out the extent of impact. Is that clear? Okay, we'll move on to the next part. Yes, so these are like types of research. It's the first area, and we have descriptive research and analytical research. And a descriptive research is always an ex post facto research. So don't worry when you see this kind of a term, ex post facto. I think 1 or 2 times this question appeared in 2018 or 17, something like that. And an ex post facto research, what happens in ex post facto research is that the researcher doesn't have a control over the variable. So what is a variable? A variable is simply something that varies in a research. For example, you are studying the amount of rain and you're looking for the amount of rain that Kerala gets in a year. Let's say Kerala got this much rain in the year 2023 during June or July. Then the variable is the amount of rain, because the amount of rain varies. So whatever varies is simply the variable. And when the researcher doesn't have any control over the variable, suppose I am a researcher who studies rain, the amount of rain I got, Kerala got. But as a researcher, I do not have any control over the amount of rain. I cannot say that this much rain should we get, like we should get more rain next month. Instead, my role is only to study whatever rain I got. I cannot say I should get more rain, I should get less rain. Basically, I don't have any control over the amount of rain, and whatever I study is basically a report or an evaluation of the existing situation. So it's an ex post factor. And then we have survey method. And for example, in the case of railway, we have, you might be familiar with, employees coming to you and asking you how was the journey. Like very rarely they'll ask you to fill a form, or like even after immediately ending the Google Meet, they'll ask you how was the meeting. After ending a WhatsApp call, they'll ask you how was the call. Then you have to rate it in star, like 5 star, 4 star. So that is a survey method. That's a survey that Google is doing. That's a survey that WhatsApp is doing, right? So likewise, the survey method is a part of the ex post facto research, because you're coming after the journey, you're coming after the call and asking how was it. Then analytical research. In the case of analytical research, the researcher has to use already available facts or information and analyze them to make a critical evaluation of the subject. It's the same. Also, it's a part of the ex post facto research or a descriptive research, where you have to analyze the result you have. You have to analyze the quantity of rain you got. You have to analyze the positive or negative responses that you got about a WhatsApp call or a Google Meet call. Okay. The other type is applied versus fundamental. You already discussed applied and fundamental in the first question. An attempt to find solution to an immediate problem. So when we have a problem and I have to find a solution, so I am doing an applied research. Okay. So I am applying a theory or a concept in order to find a solution. Then that becomes an applied research. Okay. Then we have fundamental research. Okay, fundamental research is basically about the theory. So you can see the mathematical equation, right? And among those, you can see the pi. A pi basically is a number, right? So there are researchers that research, those who have some connection to mathematics might know about pi. So there are researchers, but there were researches that happened to find the value of pi. Yeah? So what is the value of pi? And those researches are just about the value of pi. It's not applicable to anything concrete in our real life. So then we are engaging with an abstract concept. Such an engagement is a fundamental research. And when we are applying the value of pi to a problem in order to solve a real life problem, like like finding the circumstance of a circle, then we are applying the value of a pi to a problem. Then it becomes an applied research. Okay, now we have our second and third questions. Please take your time and read the question, find the answer. The first question, the second in total, is which of the sets of activities best indicate the cyclic nature of action research strategy? It's again a simple question. So please give your answer. Reflect, observe, plan, act. So these four are arranged differently. Basically, what do you do first? Is it reflect? Is it observe? Is it plan or act? Then what do you do next? Like that. So 2 people gave 4 already. Others? Everyone is for 4. Who is it? Somebody raised hands. Okay, there are people who answered 2 as well. The correct answer is 4. So basically what you do when it comes to research is you plan, you act, okay? And you plan, you act. For example, you are comparing, suppose you're trying to study the growth of a bacteria in a lab, okay? In a lab setup, you are studying the growth of a bacteria. And first you have to plan how to study the growth of a bacteria. Then you have to act. You have to try to grow bacteria in a specific setup. Then you have to observe. You have to observe what happens when you grow bacteria in that setup. And then you have to reflect. You have to you can write an article. You can think about it. And as a result of observation, you reflect and maybe you write an article, you publish, okay, you present a paper, something like that. And I think people gave 2. So let's see what is wrong with 2. Because 2 starts with observe. Okay. The problem is in action research, you do not start with observe. You do not start with observation. Instead, you start with a plan. And then you decide to act. Then comes observation. And this question, please read the question fully whenever you read. So suppose you just read it as research strategy. Instead of action research strategy, you missed the action. You just read it as what is the best indicator cyclic nature of research strategy. Then you will miss the point. Okay. So when it comes to research aptitude, I'll tell again, please read the whole question, okay, from beginning to end carefully, because most of the people lose their marks in research aptitude not because of their lack of knowledge, but because of their carelessness, okay, or like they're not willing to think and find the answer. So take your time, think about an answer and go for the answer. Which of the following sequence of research steps is nearer to scientific method? So we have a scientific method, right? In research methodology also we talk about scientific method. So science has a specific method of conducting experiments, finding solutions. So just see which one is closer. The first option says suggested solution of the problem, deducing the consequence of the solution, perceiving the problem situation, location of the difficulty, and testing solutions. The second option, perceiving the problem situation, locating actual problem and its definition, making a hypothesis, and deducing the consequence. It goes like that. Third one, defining a problem, identifying the cause of the problem, defining a population, drawing a sample. That. And fourth one, identifying the causal factors, defining the problem, developing hypothesis. We have people who answered 3. Anybody know 3? There is nobody for 1 or 2 or okay, we have 1 person for 2. Okay, we have 2 2s and I think 3 3s. That's nice. 2 2s and 3 3s. Okay, 3 is the correct answer. And please try to relate this question with the previous question. Okay? In the previous question, we said you have to start with a plan. Okay. In this question also, we said you start by defining the problem. It's part of the plan. Okay. You should define what is your problem. Okay. And secondly, you have to identify the causes of the problem. You have to see, what are the causes of the problem. Then you have to define the population. For example, let's say you're studying the poverty rate in Telangana. Okay, in Telangana, you're looking for the poverty rate. Then you have to define the problem. Are you looking for the poverty in India? No. Are you looking for the poverty in Kerala? No. You're looking for the poverty in Telangana. And also, what do you mean by poverty? This is the lack of food, it's the lack of clothes. Then you have to define the problem first. Then you have to identify the causes of the problem. Okay. You have to see what are the causes here that results in poverty. Then you have to define a population. Okay, you have to define that you are trying to conduct the study in this specific population. In Telangana, you can maybe you can define it as 2-3 district. Sorry. And then you have to draw a sample. Then you have to take a sample. For example, let's say you're giving Google Forms. Okay, you're trying to study the impact of poverty, and maybe you're giving Google Forms, or like you're giving Google Forms to the local workers, like panchayat level workers who try to eradicate poverty. And then you cannot really go and give the form to everyone who faced the problem. You cannot give your form to everyone who engage with poverty, but you will have to define a population, a specific sample. You will be familiar with the studies that people conduct while writing dissertations, right? Because we have, in colleges and schools, people write dissertations, and then they used to come up with forms. Then they send the form in groups and ask people to fill it. So what basically they're doing is they're trying to, say if 50 people fill it, we can make a conclusion from that. It's not that everyone in the world has to answer the questions, but in the specific population, you can always make a specific sample, and from the sample you collect the data, whatever you get as a result of the Google form. The Google form output is the data, and from that you can reach a generalization and conclusions. So that is the option. And there are people who gave 2. Now let's see what's wrong with 2. Perceiving the problem situation, locating the actual problem and its definition, hypothesizing. That is exactly what is wrong with it. If there is a hypothesis immediately follows the problem. Once you know the problem, you have to make a hypothesis. Okay, we'll talk about hypothesis later in detail. Quantitative versus qualitative. So as the name suggests, it's again very simple. A quantity, whenever the research involves a quantity or amount, it becomes quantitative. Okay, a qualitative, when the research is about a quality, it becomes qualitative. Like let's say, again we can go back to the old example of rain. Let's say Kerala got this much rain in December, but in 2023 December we got more rain. 2022 December we got more rain. In 2020 December we didn't get rain at all. And you're comparing the availability of rain in 2020, 2022, 2023 Decembers, right? So such a comparison is about the quantity of the rain across years. Then it's a quantitative research. And then what's a qualitative research? If it's about a quality, for example, a best examples would be the studies conducted in psychology. So in psychology, what happens is that you cannot really measure, a person. For example, let's conduct a study about motivation research. Like, let's say that students don't have any motivation to study for exam in the immediate days of exam. For example, let's say you people were like preparing for a NET exam for like 2-3 months, and as the exam date comes closer, what happens? I'll say, like, maybe just before the exam you feel too lazy, too exhausted, too fed up, and you might stop studying like 1 or 2 days before the exam, and you just wait for the exam. Or maybe you start, you'll become more hardworking as the exam arrives. So these are like 2 different possibilities. Then yes, if I am conducting a study on that, I am conducting a study on a behavior or a human quality, right? So such studies are qualitative researches. Okay, now we have question time again, and these 2 are relatively shorter questions, simpler questions as well. So just take your time and find an answer. So the problem of research ethics is concerned with which aspect? So there is an entire area called research ethics in the syllabus. So from that you can expect like maybe 1 or 2 questions. So research ethics is about what? It's a very basic question, but try to answer. Following the prescribed format: data analysis, population of research, evidence-based research. We have 1 person who gave 4. Others? We have a 2 and 4, 2 4s and 2. Others, please give your answer. Just give a random guess, whatever you think of it. So when you see a research aptitude question, I'll tell you about the procedure of answering a research aptitude question. Okay, so you take a question, read it from the beginning to end. Okay, read it carefully. Even though you don't understand a single thing, you just read it from beginning to the end and see, like, try to understand the question, even if it's very difficult to understand, and guess an answer. Once you have read from the beginning to end all options and question carefully, try to give a guess. Okay. So we have fours, one, and fours are dominating. We have this one and I think two twos. Okay, the correct answer is four. It's about evidence-based research reporting. So let's try to, let's say, eliminate the options as we tried yesterday, following the elimination method of problem solving. And research ethics is not about a thesis format. Okay, ethics is not about the number of commas, full stops, and page size. Okay, it's not about that. So one is already out. And research ethics is also not about data analysis, right? You cannot say it's more ethical to do qualitative and not do quantitative. Whatever you do, you have to follow a research ethics. That's the point. And research ethics is also not directly related to the population of research. You can conduct a research in your panchayat, you can conduct a research in Kerala, or you can conduct a research like all over India, whatever. So, but that is not necessarily connected to research ethics. But when it comes to evidence-based reporting, research ethics is important because you have to be true to your evidence. And there is an ethical commitment towards your evidence. For example, let's say you are trying to see the results of, because we used to have, like, there are medicine experiments, if you're familiar with that. When a company develop a drug, a medicine, there are always drug trials prior to that. So the company has to make sure that this medicine is safe. For example, let's say a particular company is making a new version of paracetamol, and they have to try the paracetamol to a new set of patients. And they try the paracetamol in 10 patients, the new paracetamol in 10 patients, and 2 of them died, let's say, and 8 of them are alive. But when the research reporting happens, the doctor or the person who conducted the trial has to report that these 2 persons died because this paracetamol has this side effect. That is an ethical report. But in order to sell the paracetamol, if the doctor is saying, it's just like 2 people, 8 people are still alive, so that's okay, I won't report the deaths or the causes of the death, then that becomes unethical. So evidence-based research reporting is directly connected to research ethics. And the next question, in which of the following activities potential for nurturing creative and critical thinking is relatively greater? Is it about preparing a research summary? Is it about seminar paper? Is it conference? Is it workshop? Definitely all these help in your creativity, but one has more role, one has a greater role. So there is one person who said 4, and these things may be familiar for you, right? Research summary, seminar paper, conference, workshop. And there is a person for, I think, research summary. Yes. Others give answers. These are like simple ones. Two, 4, 1, 2. Okay, is that it? Any more answers? I think we have 1, 2, and 3 so far, and 4 also. Okay, we have all answers. So we'll discuss all options as well. And let's say preparing a research summary. Preparing a research summary is definitely a creative task. It involves critical thinking, but it's something that you are doing yourself. Okay. And the problem is when you make a summary yourself, you may not really get the input from others, from other researchers, other scholars. So that is very important. So that we can remove summary. Let's go to option 2. Presenting a seminar paper is good. You get a lot of feedback in the paper presentation. That's also good. But you're only presenting about your topic. Okay. Let's say you're trying to present the paper on the effectiveness of COVID vaccine. Okay. But then you're only talking about COVID vaccine, and those who give feedback to you are also talking about COVID vaccine. You cannot really get any other ideas. A conference is again a better option because you can get multiple papers, multiple topics, multiple perspectives from related to the same topic or the same area. But when it comes to a workshop, which is the right answer, you have a greater option for critical thinking because one workshop involves multiple activities that helps you to develop your research skills, and workshop is more about improving your skills than about improving your content. Okay, so there are two things, right? When there is skill, it's like a know-how of research. You should know how to do a research. So a workshop is mostly about how to do a research, how to collect data, how to write creatively. But a conference, whether it be a conference or seminar or a research summary, those are mostly about the content. Okay, what are you writing? What is the content? How to develop this idea? How to incorporate this idea to that idea? Like that. The correct answer is workshop. Yeah, we're back to the types of research and conceptual versus empirical. Okay, so as again from the name itself, it is evident a conceptual research is related to a concept. Okay, philosophers, thinkers, they always do research about concept. For example, we talked about pi, right? So the value of pi is a concept, and when they develop the concept, it is a research on it. To take more maths example, we have certain equations in mathematics that are not solved by anyone. Everyone knows the equation, but nobody could solve it. Okay, so if you are capable of solving it, if anybody here, if anyone in the 40 can solve the equation, there is a prize. Maybe you'll get $2 million, $1 million. It's a huge prize. So whatever you do is a research on solving a particular mathematical equation. It is purely conceptual. Okay, the solving the equation doesn't involve anything around you in real life. Okay, it's conceptual. It is happening within your head. Okay, and empirical is exclusively relies on the observation or experience with hardly any regard for theory and system. In the empirical research, you're not talking about theory. You're not talking about what is in your head or in your mind. Okay, instead, it is you have to experience it or you have to observe the data, and it's a data-based research, and you have to come up to a conclusion. And there are other types of research also, one-time research or longitudinal types of research. So the difference is you're conducting a one-time study. Okay, for example, if you are looking for the impact of poverty in Telangana, you're taking a one-time survey. It's not that you go every day and ask everyone about poverty. You just conduct a survey and you analyze the result and you publish the data. That's it. But there are longitudinal time series researches. Basically, it starts at some point and it goes on. Like we talked about the growth of the bacteria. So you cannot, study the bacteria. Like you can put the beaker or the petri dish or whatever, grow some bacteria, take analyze it, and get done with it. That's not how it works. You have to see how the bacteria grows every day, every week, every month, right? I used to have friends who work in botany like labs. So they have to check this growth every day. They have to go to lab. Like for 3-4 years, they continue this longitudinal research of observing their bacteria. So their, whatever they grow, microbes. Yeah. So we have fundamental research. Fundamental research, again, it's basic research, theoretical research. It's very basic. Research is working on applied research. So we have fundamental research and applied research. We already talked about this in the first question. Applied research involves application. Fundamental research is theoretical. Okay. Question time. A researcher intends to explore the effect of possible factors for the organization of effective midday meal interventions. Which research method will be most appropriate for this study? Midday meal intervention, right? Government gives midday meals. We used to get all this milk, egg, and all. So whatever you get, midday meal as a meal. So which research you use? Is it historical, descriptive, ex post facto, experimental? I think all these we discussed. Historical is historical, basic. Experimental is it involves an experiment. Just give your guesses. So this again is a, an easily guessable thing. Yeah, we have one person who said 4. Two threes and 2 4s. So we have a competition between 3 and 4, which is descriptive and ex post facto. And it's a good confusion as well. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll eliminate options. Historical is definitely out. Experimental is also out because you cannot experiment with the midday meal. You cannot say, I'll as an experiment, I'll give some variety midday meal and see what happens for the students. You cannot do that. So it's not experimental and it's not historical. It's not like a study of if Kerala or ancient India had midday meal schemes. Instead, it is a descriptive survey method or ex post facto method. The correct answer is ex post facto method. Okay, so the idea is that you cannot complete such a research only with a survey. You cannot conduct surveys with students and teachers and say that is the conclusion, that is the analysis, or that is the solution, whatever you have. Instead, you have to conduct a survey. That I totally agree. Also, with survey, you have to conduct other studies, other evaluations, other data collections, other modes of data collection to study, the effect of midday meal intervention. So when it comes to ex post facto, you are simply studying the event that happened already. So you have an event that is already there, that is a midday meal program, and you're studying the program from using the survey and other tools. So ex post facto is a more appropriate answer. Next question. Which of the following is an initial mandatory requirement for pursuing research? It's again a simple question. Design, research question, data analysis, formulation, hypothesis. This also we mentioned. Many people are saying it's a research question. Are there anybody for hypothesis? Others, please answer this. Just give your number, your favorite number in 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, don't do the favorite thing in the exam, but then, yeah. We have a couple of fours, I think, 2 fours. Yeah. The correct answer is a research question. I think I already mentioned it. The first step is a research problem or a research question. You have to define the problem or the question, and then you make a hypothesis. You cannot have a hypothesis without a problem. A hypothesis is always about a problem. Okay, so you should have a research question first. Okay, and then we have types of research designs. So these are like, again, not very complicated. Exploratory research design. It's also known as formative research. So basically, you're doing an exploration of a problem, and for that, you need a formative research design. So when it say formative or exploratory, it says the design should be flexible. Okay, required as the initial research problem would be transformed into a more precise one in the explanatory study. A center may necessitate changes in the research procedure for collecting relevant data. Let's say I want to study the poverty, the correlation between poverty and unemployment. Okay, that's my study. And I started with this problem, this hypothesis that there is a relation between poverty and hypothesis. When people are poor, there is when people are unemployed, there is a higher poverty. That's the hypothesis. So higher unemployment leads to poverty. That, let's say, that's the hypothesis. And I started the study. And if I'm setting it as an exploratory research, as a formative research design, when I start study, I can understand it is not just unemployment. There are multiple other factors that lead to poverty. Okay, even many unemployed ones are not poor. So I have to include all other factors that contribute to the to poverty apart from unemployment. So then I am also including many other causes and reasons for my research. So basically, my research design is not final; it is willing to change. Also, it is exploring a problem. Then descriptive and diagnostic. Can anybody say what is a descriptive design? We already described it, like we already talked about it. So just you can either text or turn on a microphone. You don't have to read the text and say like whatever you think is a descriptive design. Okay, so I'll read the complicated text because this thing is the way they are putting it is making it difficult. A descriptive design basically involves a description of a problem. A descriptive research design is concerned with describing the characteristics of a particular individual or a group. Meanwhile, diagnostic research design determines the frequency with a variable occurs in relation with another variable. So let's say I'm looking at, let's say, all school-going children, like all the kids who go to school, watch a lot of Instagram reels. So my research design is saying that I am trying to describe the character of a school kid as an Instagram reel watcher or whatever. Then that's a descriptive research. But when I'm doing a diagnostic research, it is like I'm trying to see what causes this real addiction among school children. So I'm setting a few factors. One is a lot of time, and the other one is peer pressure. Like even if you don't, even if you decide to not watch the reel, there are people who send you reels, right? In Instagram, you can send reels to others. So it's like, there is a peer pressure going on there. So then like I can see all these variables. Variable basically, as you said, something that varies. So when I say the real addiction is because of A, B, C, D, then it becomes a diagnostic research because diagnosis, you might be familiar with the term, right? We diagnose cancer, we diagnose liver dysfunction, or we diagnose whatever. So we are diagnosing something as a result of something. So one is diagnostic, the other one is descriptive. Okay. And hypothesis testing research design. So before that, I'll say what is a hypothesis. So a hypothesis is the assumption that we have before starting a research. So I just said the hypothesis. That is, all school-going kids have a real addiction, or like a majority of the school kids have real Instagram real addiction. That's a hypothesis. I haven't conducted the study. I haven't taken the number of students, and I haven't reached any conclusion. I haven't analyzed any data. I'm simply saying I see many people, many school kids watching reels. So yeah, but I might be very well wrong. Hypothesis. If there's a chance that the hypothesis becoming wrong, they are not watching reels, but they are watching shorts, YouTube shorts. So there's a chance that my hypothesis is wrong, but in a different way. So that is what hypothesis. Even before a research, even before analysis, even before data, you are assuming something. Okay. Hypothesis is a testing research design, and those in which now we have a research design. It's a design in which we are simply testing the hypothesis. Like if I am testing, if my understanding, if my hypothesis that the school children are real addicts is right or wrong. So my purpose is to test the hypothesis. And the studies require procedures that would not only decrease bias and enhance reliability. So there is a decrease in the bias because I might find out that there is a good number of school children who doesn't even care about Instagram reels, who doesn't know that Instagram reels exist. So if such things happen, then I'm kind of embracing the fact that I was biased. But also facilitate deriving inference about the causality. Yes, back to question time. The format of thesis writing is the same as in. Is it the same as a research paper, or is it the same as seminar, or is it the same as a dissertation, or is it the same as a workshop? It's again a simple question because you might have already done all these things: dissertations, seminars, papers. We have multiple trees. I think most of you have, might have written dissertations, right? Degree PG people. All of you are saying it's like a dissertation. Oh no, you haven't done a dissertation. Okay. I thought it is compulsory for people in music. The correct answer is anyway dissertation, because a dissertation, this is more like a bigger version of a dissertation. A paper and article, you just have 2-3 pages, and it has a title and an abstract. It has a different structure. Presentation is definitely not like a thesis. A presentation is what you present, and something thesis is what you write. So even if you write a script for the presentation, that is different from a thesis. And yeah, definitely. And the next question: in qualitative research paradigm, which of the following features may be considered critical? Data collected with standardized tools. So focus, it's qualitative research. Okay. So which of these things are important? Is it data collection, or is it sampling, and bottom up empirical evidence, top down systematic evidence? Just give your guess. We'll talk about this in detail. 2. Okay. There are 2 people saying 2, 3 people doing 4, and 1 person for 5. Any more people? Okay, the correct answer is 3. Data collection with bottom up empirical evidence. So you already talked about a qualitative research, right? So you're talking about a quality. We took the example of a psychological study of motivation, right? Motivation for study of exam or whatever. So when we make such a qualitative understanding, first thing is like all these things are important. Okay, all these things are parts of a qualitative study, but all of these things are not critical. All of it doesn't have critical importance. For example, you cannot very well do a qualitative analysis without a data collection. You can conduct interviews. You don't have to collect a larger data. You can interview 2-3 people and write a case study and make a research. Okay, so you don't need that fully there. And then sampling design with sample techniques. Again, sampling is also not a critical part of the qualitative research, because sampling is a part of data, and data collection is not necessary. And the other one, the third option, data collection with bottom up empirical evidence. This bottom up part is important, and that makes it the right answer. And the fourth one, data gathering to take place with top-down systematic evidence. So what's the difference between a top-down systematic evidence and a bottom-up empirical evidence? Bottom-up, as the name say, you're going from bottom to up, towards up. So when you're doing a qualitative study, you're collecting empirical evidence from people. Let's say you are interviewing 10 people. Okay, that interview is an empirical data collection, happens at the very bottom level of your research, and the conclusion that you build from the 10 interviews is going up. It's like the top of a pyramid. It goes up, and that is the conclusion. And the other part, when it comes from top down, is you're taking a theory or a concept that exists top there, like out there somewhere. It's not empirical, it's not observable, it's not down, it's not bottom with you. A theory or a concept is always a top position, it's somewhere there. And you're taking that theory and trying to match the theory with the evidence you have, right? So that's a top-down method. And on the contrary, you have a bottom-up method. So these are like the different ways of doing research. And what we need in a qualitative research is you cannot start with a theory. Instead, you have to begin from the people, from the empirical observation of people or events or phenomena, whatever. Okay, now we are here about the discussion of a variable. Variable, I said whatever varies is a variable. Age is a variable. Number of children is another variable. And we have a continuous variable and a non-continuous variable. Age is a continuous variable because what happens is like in 1996, I was 0-year-old. In 1997, I became 1 year. And 1998, 2, like that, it increases 1, 2, 3, 4. Each year, it increases continuously. So whatever goes continuously is a continuous variable. But number of children is a non-continuous variable. I cannot say I have one child in 2020, 2030, and it's not necessary I have like 3 or 2. But there's no continuous sequence for the number of children. Okay. And the other thing with continuous variable is that I can say I am 6-year-old, and I can also be 6.5 years old. I can also be 6 years and 9 months. I can be 6.7 or 6.5 or 6.75 years old. So what happens there is that there is a continuation. Okay, but we cannot say about the number of children in a class. I cannot say there are 10.5 students. You cannot really have a half child. You can only have a full child, right? So obviously you cannot have a 10.5 children. You can only have 10 children. So it's a non-continuous variable because you can only count it in terms of 1, 2, 3. Okay. If demand depends on price and demand is a dependent, okay, yeah. Then there is a dependent variable and an independent variable. If the demand is dependent on the price, let's say the demand increases as the price increases, then demand is dependent on the price. Let's say the demand increases as the price decreases, and the demand is a dependent variable because demand depends on the price. The demand of gold increases as the price decreases or as the price increases. So in that case, we are saying demand is dependent on the price. Demand is a dependent variable which is determined by the independent variable like the price, income, and price of the sale. For example, let's say I have an income of 2 lakh per month, a huge income, and that means I can buy gold, right? So in that case, the demand for me decreases because I can buy it without spending much. But when my income goes low, it will be difficult for me to purchase gold. So it also affects the demand. But whatever happens, my income is an independent variable because my income is not directly related to the price of gold. On the other hand, when I study the data of my pattern of buying gold, the price of the gold is dependent on my income. So there are dependent variables and independent variables. Then extraneous variables. Independent variables which are not directly related to the purpose of the study. For example, let's say you are a researcher who want to study the relation between a children's performance and their self-confidence. Okay, the focus of the study is the relation between self-confidence and their performance. Okay, so in this case, the later is independent and the former is dependent, because in the scope of the study, you're saying that the performance is dependent on self-confidence. Okay, and if you set it like that, you might encounter many other extra variables, something like the availability of digital tools. If the children can get multiple digital tools, there is a tendency for the child to score better, let's say. And in that case, you are putting an extra variable there, but that is not really relevant for your study. Though it is a variable, though it has some effect on the study, it's an extra variable. It's outside the scope of your study. And when we put a control on the study, what we do is that we design the research in a specific way so that the extra variables have very less impact on the study. So a good study is always something that removes the relevance of the extra. And the hypothesis, this we already mentioned. Yeah, we'll proceed to the steps of research. I will quickly go through these areas, and like we already discussed this as a part of the questions. We formulate a problem first, then we have to develop objectives, like depending on a research design, and preparing a research design. Then we make a sampling design. Then we write a proposal. Hypothesis is not mentioned here, but hypothesis comes immediately after the research problem. Okay, once you have a proposal, you basically start the study, and you start collecting data, and you analyze data, you have to process data, and you have to interpret data as well. And once you have the analysis, a report, and the interpretation, you can write a report of the study. So basically, this is a very logical, consequence, like from beginning from one to another, a logical sequence of what happens in the research. So you, instead of by hearting it, try to understand the steps. Okay, it's question time. I think it's about time. Maybe we'll skip a few questions and we'll proceed to the last part. Yeah, this is format is important. So we'll just quickly go through that. This is a format has a cover. Okay, basically and those who have done a UG dissertation might know it has a format. It has a cover page. The cover page has a title. It has the name of the author. It has the name of the degree. Like for example, I'll say in when I get a PhD, maybe like 1 or 2 years after, I like this is a project submitted in partial fulfillment of the degree of PhD for this person. Okay, and then there is an approval. You have to say that this is approved, and then there should be a plagiarism report. A plagiarism report is like, for those who are not familiar with the word plagiarism, something that we have to, we can simply copy paste from online, right? You can copy from Wikipedia. You can copy like most of the people do their assignments. You can copy from other sites and write answers. But when it comes to something like a research, you have to be more serious. You cannot copy paste. You have to paraphrase. So instead of simply directly pasting, you have to change the wording and paraphrase or whatever. Change it in your own way that suits your study. And you have to reduce the resemblance of your thesis with whatever there is online. So if you have, like, let's say there is a 5% resemblance, it's okay. But if there is a 10-20% resemblance, that's not okay because it's 20% plagiarism. Okay, so you should have a plagiarism statement saying that this thesis has only 2% plagiarism, so that is okay. And yeah, copyright pages, dedication page, acknowledgement page, these are optional. You can say I dedicate my thesis to whatever and whoever, and you can say acknowledge this person, all my friends. It's a place where you mention names of your friends, like people who have helped in the research. And then there is an abstract. We'll move quickly. Abstract is a concise summary, like you're saying, this thesis has all these things inside. And table of content, it's like the names of chapters and all. And list of figures, we have this many figures, list of tables. So when you have figures, you have a list of figures. You have tables, you have a list of tables, abbreviation page. So how NT-NET asks about this question, in most of the scenario, they usually try to arrange it in order. You start from the cover page, and then you have what, and then you have what, and you end with what. So the ordering might be the typical question from a thesis format question. And this part is also important. An introduction is basically a background of the problem, a statement of the problem. Then you have a literature review, and after the review, literature review is basically whatever studies happened before you. And then there is a methodology. So you propose a solution, and you should have a method to study the problem. And then there is a solution validation analysis, a result and discussion. So you analyze the data, you look for the results, and you discuss the results. And then you make some conclusions and recommendation. And that's it, you have a thesis. And towards the end, you should have a bibliography. Bibliography, remember, always comes after the conclusion, after the recommendation. So don't make the mistakes of writing bibliography or reference before that. Then appendix. Appendix is, by definition, what comes towards the end. Okay. Appendix, for example, if you have to include extra information about whatever you have written, you can give it in the appendix. Okay, it's our final question, and we'll have just 1 or 2 pages, and we'll conclude. So please give your answer. In a research on the effect of child rearing practices on stress proneness of children in completing school projects, hypothesis. Yeah, that's a hypothesis. Child rearing practices do influence stress proneness. At the data analysis, so you have to be patient enough to read very long questions when it comes to research aptitudes. If you are scared of long questions, practice it and kind of make long questions your friends. And if not friends, at least don't make them enemies or foes. Just just try to read them with tolerance, and even if it's too long. So the hypothesis here was child rearing practices influence stress proneness. Okay, so among mothers, the child rearing practices influence the stress of the mother or stress of mothers. And then there is a data analysis which analyzed multiple mothers and children. A null hypothesis is advanced to find out the inability of a research hypothesis. Okay, then there comes a null hypothesis which shows the inability. So a null hypothesis is something that goes against the alternative hypothesis. We'll talk about that in the next slide. So the null hypothesis is rejected at 0.01 level of significance. What decision may be warranted in respect of the research hypothesis? Basically, the question is very simple. If the question can be asked in one sentence like this: if a null hypothesis is rejected in a research study, what will be the decision about a research hypothesis? That is the question. Will we reject the research hypothesis also, or will we accept it, or both will be rejected? Then no decision can be taken. It will be accepted. Anybody else? Two. So that is the answer. The research hypothesis will be accepted. We'll explain in the next slide why. So two things. Okay. So we are like, let's say, effect of biofertilizer X on plant growth. So let's say there is a particular biofertilizer and it has this impact on the growth of plants. Let's say the alternative hypothesis will be application of biofertilizers increase plant growth, and null hypothesis is application of biofertilizers do not increase plant growth. Now you see the difference. A null hypothesis is always opposite of the alternative hypothesis. Okay, so you basically, when you say a study rejected the null hypothesis, that means the alternative hypothesis is accepted. So in the previous question, as we saw, this question can be asked in a single sentence, and it will be very easy for you to answer. But it's involved that they'll make things at least look complicated. So you have to see through what NTA does, read the question, and go for the answer. So this one is last part, positivism and post-positivism. So for positivist research or for positivist argument, we are saying there is an objective reality out there. So you can actually study an objective reality. You can measure reality, you can quantify reality, and you can kind of make conclusions about that. That is basically positivism in short. But when it comes to post-positivism, they're saying there is no reality there. You cannot really study a reality. For example, when you talk about science, we say science is the study of the reality out there. It's an empirical study of the empirical reality. But if you're saying that there is no such thing as an empirical reality, which is very constant, then you are making a counter argument. And that is the positivism argument. There are like other things. One is phenomenalism. Phenomenalism, basically, you can confirm it as a phenomena. If your senses can regard something as knowledge, you can accept it. Deductivism is something that you used deduction. Inductivism, I'll just briefly mention induction and deduction. Because I think there were like a couple of questions in the previous years. In induction, you are coming from specific to general. That is induction. A famous example of induction is you say that you only see black crows, right? Anybody of you have ever seen a white crow, right? No, right? So all the crows that we see around us are black. Then we are making a general statement that all crows are black. So if I make a statement that all crows are black, then I am doing an inductive reasoning, because based on the crows I see around me, which is specific, I am making a general statement that all crows in the world ever existed are black. So then I am moving from a specific observation to a general conclusion, S to G. So we usually use this equation, ISG, induction, specific to general. And deduction is the opposite. You are coming from a general statement to a very specific case. For example, let's say that all mammals give birth to their children. All mammals give birth to their children. That is a general statement. From there, we come to a specific conclusion. Humans are mammals. Humans give birth to their children. They don't lay eggs or they don't use other means of reproduction. Instead, they give birth. So in that case, we're coming from a general understanding to a specific case, and that is inductivism. And objectivism is it's like science should be value free, and scientific statements also should be value free because there is an objective reality out there. So that's it. I think we have 8 minutes for questions and discussions if you have. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all.
So if you have any question, you can ask now. As there are no any questions, we can wind up the session. It was a exciting session taken by our wonderful faculty, Rafi sir. I hope you all enjoyed the session. Now, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Rafi sir for such an engaging session. I am also thankful for all the participants who were been here actively listening the class. So we will meet again tomorrow to have a discussion, to have a discuss on the topic logical reasoning. Thank you all.